Most videos about making money outside your 9 to 5 are built around a number. 12 ways, 20 ideas, 50 methods. The number is supposed to feel like abundance. What it usually creates is paralysis. So before we go through anything on this list, there's something worth saying up front. Most of these won't work for you. Not because they don't work, some of them do, but because income strategies aren't universally transferable. What works depends on what you already have, what you are willing to build, and how much time you can actually protect. Keep that in mind as we move through this. The goal isn't to give you 12 options to try simultaneously. It's to help you identify which 2 or 3 are worth your actual attention. Know why most people stay stuck at the starting point. There's a pattern that shows up consistently with people trying to build income outside of work. They start with effort. They trade time for small returns, plateau quickly, and then conclude that the whole thing doesn't work for them. What they usually missed is the difference between effort-based income and leverage-based income. Effort-based income stops the moment you stop. Leverage-based income, built on skills, systems, or platforms, continues to function at some level even when you step back. That's not a passive income pitch. We'll come back to why passive income is frequently misunderstood. The point here is structural. Where you position your time determines whether your results compound or reset. Before we look at the methods, we also have to acknowledge your actual environment. You're likely dealing with job fatigue. After 8 hours of professional output, your brain isn't a blank slate. You have a narrow window, maybe 2 to 3 hours on a weeknight and a handful of hours on weekends. Most people fail not because they chose a bad method, but because they chose one that fights against their schedule instead of fitting into it. For this breakdown, we're working with 3 tiers. Tier 1 covers quick cash, low leverage, high time dependency. Good for immediate needs, limited for long-term growth. Tier 2 covers skill-based, scalable income. This is the core focus. It uses your existing professional expertise to create higher hourly rates and the beginnings of a compounding effect. Tier 3 involves early asset leverage, where you begin to decouple time from income entirely. But it requires the most upfront investment before any return appears. Most people default to Tier 1 and stay there. Not because Tier 1 is bad. Sometimes it's the right starting point, but because they never intended to move. Tier 1, the tactical gap fillers. These methods are for when you need a predictable result quickly and have zero startup cost to spare. Specialized user testing is not generic surveys. Platforms that connect you with companies testing software pay for verbal, structured feedback on how real people navigate their products. The work is accessible. The leverage is essentially zero. You're trading minutes for dollars, and the income is capped by test availability. It's honest work, but there's no compounding effect attached to it. Professional bookkeeping for small businesses is a better fit if you're already organized with numbers. Many local contractors and small operators need someone to categorize expenses for a few hours a week. The income is stable and relatively predictable, but it's fixed. You don't scale this without taking on more clients and more time. Niche transcription, specifically legal or medical, pays a premium over general transcription. Because it requires specialized vocabulary, general transcription is heavily saturated, and the rates reflect that. If you have relevant background, the niche version is a more defensible entry point into Tier 1. These 3 are useful as cash flow bridges. They're not strategic destinations. Tier 2, the skill-based engine. This is where your 9 to 5 experience becomes a structural advantage rather than something you leave at the office. Ghostwriting for executives is one of the more underutilized paths in this tier. Many senior professionals have genuine knowledge and zero time to write. If you can take their thinking and turn it into LinkedIn posts, short articles, or industry commentary, you're selling a result, their authority, not just words on a page. The leverage is meaningful because the value you're providing is disproportionate to the time you're spending. Micro-consulting through expert networks is another strong fit for people with 5 or more years in a specific field. Platforms built around short paid consultations allow professionals to monetize the shortcuts they have already built. The knowledge that took them years to acquire, but takes 30 minutes to transfer. The barrier is specificity. Broad expertise doesn't position well here. A narrow operational focus does. Technical implementation for small agencies sits in a gap that consistently needs filling. Many boutique agencies sell strategy and then struggle with execution. Setting up CRM systems, building email automations, configuring workflows. If you have that implementation skill from your day job, the market for it outside your employer is real. Tools that reduce the administrative overhead of this kind of work can cut your setup time significantly while you still charge for the full value of the outcome. Presentation and deck design is overlooked because it feels ordinary to anyone who does it regularly. For a startup preparing a pitch or a small business trying to close a contract, a professionally built deck is high stakes. If you spend time in presentation software at work, the gap between what you can produce and what most people can produce is wider than it appears from the inside. Specialized research reports serve a similar function. Curating relevant industry data into a digestible monthly summary for professionals in a specific niche is a form of intellectual leverage. You're doing the filtering work that busy people don't have time to do themselves. The income model can be retainer-based, which is more stable than project-by-project work. The mistake most people make is staying in Tier 1 because it feels predictable. But Tier 1 has no compounding effect. In Tier 2, your reputation builds over time, your delivery efficiency improves, and your positioning strengthens to the point where you're no longer competing on price. That transition doesn't happen automatically. It requires deliberate positioning from the start. But it's the structural difference between income that grows and income that plateaus. Tier 3. Building the asset. These require the most upfront work for the least immediate return. They're also the only paths that can eventually function with significantly reduced active input. Niche digital products, templates, checklists, frameworks, or SOPs built on your professional workflow are the most accessible entry point into this tier. If you've built a system at work that saves you 2 hours a week, other people in your field will pay for that system. The setup cost is low. The time required to build credibility around the product is not, and that part is frequently underestimated. Paid industry newsletters work when they're built on data and insight for a specific professional vertical, not general lifestyle content. The leverage is real. You write once, and the value reaches many. The time to meaningful income is long, and the drop-off rate for people who start and stop before the audience is established is high. This is a 3-year play presented as a 1-year play in most discussions about it. Curriculum licensing is a path most people don't consider. Instead of teaching students directly, you build a training module and license it to companies or existing education platforms. The leverage is higher than direct teaching because you're not exchanging your time for each transaction. Lead generation for high-ticket services operates on relationship leverage. If you have strong professional networks and can consistently connect service providers with qualified clients, the economics of taking a percentage of contracts can reach a meaningful level over time. This is less about content or skills and more about the quality and depth of your existing relationships. The hidden cost layer. This is where most videos stop. It's also where the clearest thinking is required. Every method in this list has a saturation layer. Generic freelancing is more competitive than it was 5 years ago. Content niches are crowded. Survey platforms are flooded with participants. The response to saturation isn't to avoid those spaces. It's to enter with a sharper position. A generalist in a saturated market competes on price. A specialist in the same market competes on value. Those are structurally different games. Platform dependency is a real risk that rarely gets addressed directly. When your income runs entirely through a single marketplace, a single content platform, or a single affiliate program, you are exposed to their policy changes, algorithm shifts, and commission restructuring. That's not a reason to avoid platforms. They provide genuine reach, but it is a reason to treat any single platform as a distribution channel rather than a foundation. Time drain risk is the most underestimated cost in Tier 1 and early Tier 2. It's entirely possible to spend significant hours generating returns that fall below your existing hourly rate at work. Sometimes that's the right move. You're paying time to build a skill or a reputation. But it should be a deliberate choice, not a default outcome you didn't see coming. One more thing worth naming. If your side income begins to jeopardize your primary salary before it can credibly replace it, you have lost leverage, not gained it. Stability first, expansion second. Desperation compresses your decision-making and leads to the kinds of shortcuts that collapse early-stage income systems. How to select the right path. The right starting point comes down to 3 variables: your existing skill base, your available time, and your risk tolerance. If you have around 5 hours a week and need cash flow in the near term, Tier 1 with a clear exit timeline is the honest choice. If you have a specialized career background and can protect 10 hours a week, Tier 2 is where the structural opportunity is. If you're working toward a longer-term exit from the time for money model, begin building a Tier 3 asset in whatever protected time you can find. Saturday mornings, early commutes, whatever your schedule allows. The most important filter is this: don't look for the easiest option. Look for the one where your 9-to-5 experience gives you a head start. If you're a project manager by day, don't try to build a graphic design side practice. Build a project management consultancy for small businesses. If you're in finance, don't start a generic writing service. Write for finance executives. And use the leverage you already have instead of starting from zero in a field where you have none. Personality factors matter more than most frameworks acknowledge. Some income paths require 6 to 12 months of consistent output before any meaningful feedback arrives. If you need early validation to stay consistent, strategies with faster feedback loops, consulting, freelancing, are better matches than content or digital products. Choosing a path that fits your working style is not a weakness. It's how you avoid the pattern of starting and stopping that keeps most people in Tier 1 indefinitely. The long game. Most people treat side income like a sprint. They run hard for a month, exhaust themselves, and stop. Then they conclude that the strategy failed, when what actually happened is that the approach was unsustainable from the start. All tools and platforms exist across all 3 tiers that can reduce the operational drag on your time. Streamlining client acquisition, automating delivery steps, cutting administrative overhead. They function as execution support, not income substitutes. The strategic decisions, what to build, how to position it, who it serves, remain yours to make. A website builder won't make you a consultant. An email automation tool won't make you a writer. They reduce friction on something that already has structural value. Use them that way. The option that tends to feel the slowest at the beginning is usually the one with the most structural upside. Fast return strategies rarely compound. Strategies that require you to build something, a skill, a reputation, an audience, or a system, tend to produce returns that outlast the effort that created them. Income follows leverage, not urgency. Pick one path. Build it with enough depth that it starts to function as a skill asset. Evaluate it honestly after a defined period. Then decide whether to expand or reposition. That's not a shortcut. It's the actual process.